In this final image sampling video for the chapter, I'm going to walk through setting up and then using what has come to be called the universal settings approach. This is a quick and easy way to get high quality image sampling from V-Ray, whilst at the same time bypassing the need to understand or even touch the vast majority of image sampling controls that the renderer makes available. The drawback is that this approach will more than likely leave us a long way short of rendering optimally in any of the scenes that we may be working on. With a little bit of tweaking, it is highly likely that we would be able to get similar quality from our scene, but with faster, sometimes much faster render times. The beauty of these settings though is that they require, as we say, almost no parameter tweaking at all and are guaranteed to give us a good to very good result at the end of the rendering process. The lack of optimization tends to mean that these settings are best employed when rendering stills. If we have a 500 frame animated camera sequence that will take 50 minutes a frame to render using the universal approach, but that with a little bit of tweaking we could get down to say 15 minutes a frame, well, I'm sure you see the potential drawback of sticking with the universal approach in any kind of animated situation. Universal settings work because the high primary subdiv value that it uses essentially causes most, if not all, of the sampling in a scene to be performed by the primary rays, rather that is than making use of the secondary ray subdivs that are available on many materials and lights, etc. These primary rays will use as many samples per pixel as required in order to achieve the specified noise threshold. In many ways this is similar to a progressive path tracing approach, only here we are working on a per bucket basis. To get our universal settings up and running then, let's open the Options dialog and in the Image Sampler rollout switch from Fixed to the Adaptive DMC engine, making certain that the min and max subdiv values are set to 1 and 100 respectively. In the DMC Sampler rollout we can set the adaptive amount parameter to 0.9, and then, so as to make certain that the system is able to make good use of the max number of samples available, we need to adjust the noise threshold, as the default will most likely leave us with too much noise in the scene. A typical production quality value is 0.005. Do keep in mind though that whilst lower values here will typically mean a cleaner image, they will also give us longer render times. Finally, let's jump into the indirect illumination rollout. Make certain that GI is enabled and that the primary GI engine is set to brute force and the secondary to light cache, leaving subdiv values for both set at their defaults. Indeed, we want to leave all subdiv values found anywhere in the engine at their defaults, given that they won't, in all likelihood, have any kind of effect anyway. The value of 100 that we have set for our max subdivs will almost certainly override everything else in the scene. All that is left for us to do now is take a render. And what we get, as promised, is a clean-looking render that makes use of a set of parameters that can be applied to pretty much any scene we find ourselves working with, which is really the point of the universal settings approach. Universal settings then, whilst a long way from being an optimal approach to rendering, is a setup that is quick and easy to put together and is one that is guaranteed to produce good-looking renders. If we have a dedicated rendering machine that we can leave this setup on, whilst we quite happily go and work on other aspects of our project, then we have a potentially huge boost in productivity at our fingertips, and a guarantee that when we come back to our rendering machine, we will have a clean, high-quality image that is ready for either being worked on in post-production or sent out for final delivery to a client.